Welcome back to another episode of Comes a Time. I'm Mike, and the glowing, gushing, happy man next to me is Oteil. And he's
We're
glowing
just,
for a reason. Who did we have today, Oteil?
you guys know I just really recently got into professional wrestling. And so I couldn't believe when Mike told me that we were going to have Diamond Dallas Page on, who's a 3-time heavyweight champion. You know, a little backstory. All of you probably know my back was giving me some really big problems. And then when I got into wrestling and just started watching the interviews and documentaries and stuff, I saw how bad their backs were, and I was like, wow, I don't really have back pain. I have back discomfort, probably.
Yeah.
And so when I saw this documentary, Relentless, and saw about DDP, which Mike, you had told me about a while back.
Yeah.
Um, but when I made that, I was so inspired. I joined it. And then all of a sudden, Mike's like, "Yeah, DDP's coming on the pod." I was like, "What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
you kidding me? Like, this is too much." And he's so inspirational. Like, what a salt of the earth.
Well, yeah, this was fun to watch you have him on the podcast. I think this was what it was like probably when we had Paige or Weir when I was just like, "Do you like music?" No, okay, no. I'll tell you, going on the road and doing shows, and not wanting to leave the room, and not wanting to go down and try to figure out if there's a gym in the hotel or it's nasty out weather-wise or whatever. Like, I can't tell you how many times I was like, "Well, I have DDP yoga. I have to do it." And I would turn it on, and I'd be in my room in between the beds or whatever, laying a towel down sideways in the hotel room and moving shit around to figure out how to do it. And you do it. And you just figure out a way. And his voice and when you do something enough with an exercise that thing, you don't even have to watch it. You just know it, and you can turn the other way even if you have to. And you're,
It's up in the
superstar. And he's like, look, if you can't look up, look down at those beads of sweat dripping off your nose. There's gonna be a few, and it's like you're kind of talking along with them, and it's kind of like you get to know these. Like, I tried to write a joke about, like, the only people I communicated with during COVID were like TV, like on TV doing exercises, but it's and then you learn about the stuff that he's done for people, and it's look, there's certain people who just kind of have that, like, I'm gonna help, and I don't think I have a choice to. And clearly he's one of those, because I mean, look at this. I mean, he's his peers, complete strangers who need help, other people sending videos of people who they think need help to him, and he rises to the occasion, and he's
a world champion that's in the Hall of Fame. And he said, "This is by far the biggest thing I've ever done in my life." It's just, and boy, does the guy know how to end a podcast. I mean, like, I'm not even gonna say anything more. Like, you want to see this one? He's just,
yeah. We were a guest on his podcast, I think, today. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and you want to know what else is pretty awesome? What we didn't even get into, but it's something that I think is so great. He got into wrestling pretty late in his life for a wrestler.
Yeah.
And look what he accomplished.
35?
Yeah. No, I mean, come on. So it's kind of
beaten up
it's all good. Anyway, enjoy it, and we love you guys, and we hope you enjoyed as much as we did, and I hope you're smiling as much as Oteil.
You will be.
Thanks.
How you doing?
I was wondering how to say that.
Oatmeal with no M in it.
Oteil. Okay, Oteil.
I'm a comic, and Oteil is a musician. He played bass with the Allman Brothers for 17 years, and with Dead and Company
that
for
must have been a
5.
blast.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was...
How much of that 17 years do you remember?
Actually,
Just enough.
I remember a lot more of it than they remember their first 17 years, because I was
I'll bet
5 when they started. So I got the gig when I was 5 when they started. I got the gig when I was 32. And so they had done all their, like, death
The heavy
defying.
duty partying part.
Yeah. So I had the easier part, you know. Could
Oh,
see
that's
how you're going to end up if you do that, you know.
ooh. You know, my dad was my role model of what not to do.
Yes.
He
yes.
was. He was.
Yep.
Was he a wrestler too?
No, but he drank a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, I like to have a cocktail, and I drank a lot when I was
Me too.
younger. But as I got older, you know, now a couple of days, if I drink twice a week, and if I have a couple glasses of wine or whatever, you know, if I drink a bottle, you know, if Nash is here, Kevin Nash is here, it'll be much more. But normally, I just try to keep it down. You know, it's
Yeah.
all how you age as you move forward. And I take care of myself too good. You know.
It's almost too like hangovers that now come in phases, where it's like the first day is phase 1, the second day is phase 2. It's like I
Yeah.
remember pre-gaming used to be drinking before you go drink. Now pre-gaming is Advil and a nap and some prayers, and yeah, it's a whole different game now. So the wrestling Otila and I talk quite a bit about how the parallels between being on the road as a comic, being on the road as a musician, being on the road as a wrestler. It's we live a circus life. It's a whole other world than most people get.
Yeah, it's and the road's hard, man. Road's hard. Beats your body up. Now imagine having 5 car crashes in one day in a ring and being on that road.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I beat up when we go on the road, and we travel really well. And we don't do a lot of dates. Like I used to do the, you know, 250 plus dates a year.
Sure.
And then when I recently got into professional wrestling, and a lot of it through interviews and documentaries and stuff. And when I heard how many days you guys were on the road as champs, like it didn't get, you were out there just as much and
Yeah.
getting banged up. And I was just like, I was having back problems over the summer. And I told someone, I was like, I don't think I have back problems. I think I have back discomfort. These guys have, and I'm actually doing your DDPY now to
Are
help.
you really?
Yeah, so I don't have to
Awesome.
get surgery.
Me too, man.
That's my last hope. Yeah.
Well, and it will be the promised land for you, because let's go. Let's start this thing. Are we already live?
We're doing it.
We're
We're
already
in.
starting,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's rock. Yeah.
You know, that was where it all comes from for me, because when I blew my back out, I had 3 spine specialists tell me, you're done. Now, you have to understand, I tried wrestling when I was 23. I had 3 matches. It didn't work out for me. I came back at 31 when I was running big nightclub in Fort Myers, Florida. And I've been in the nightclub business the whole time. And I came in as a manager and a color commentator because I thought I was too old to be a wrestler at 31. Yeah. For those first 3.5 years, I mean, it cost me money to be Diamond Dallas Page. Yeah. And when I finally got my break in WCW, Dusty, who I'd worked for in Florida for no money, as a manager and a color commentator, Dusty brought me in, and it took 4 months for me to get a contract. And I finally got a contract, and 5 months into the contract as a manager and a color commentator, one day Magnum TA came up to me right before we're doing TV. And he came up to me and he goes, listen, Dusty couldn't do this, you know, because Dusty loved me like a brother and a son. And he said, listen, we can't let you manage anymore. And I'm like, why not? What did I do wrong? I'll fix it. And he says, really, you can't, because it's not your fault. He goes, the hair, the bling, the clothes, the rap, the diamond dolls. It's like, no one's paying attention to the wrestler. You're taking too much attention away. And I'm like, Magnum, are you telling me I'm too over the top for professional wrestling? You know, and, you know, bottom line was, he goes, it's not your fault. And what he said to me was, you know, he should have given you a pair of tights and boots and see if you could do this. And he laughed, because at 35 and a half, that's absurd. But I had 7 months left of my contract. And that's where I was like, I never got into this business because I wanted to be a manager or a color commentator. I wanted to be a wrestler. So I figured I had 7 months left of my contract. They can't tell me no, because I'm going down there and I'm already getting paid.
Right.
And so I did. And within 3 months, they put me on TV. And right when I started to get some momentum with Kevin Nash as a tag team at the bottom, the curtain jerkers, but we were getting some sort of momentum. I tore my rotator cuff and they fired me. And that's when Jake Roberts came into my life, and Jake took me under his wing. And to finally get there, when I finally came back to WCW, it took me, if you count from when I started managing, it took me 8 years to be an overnight success. And as a musician and as a comic, you know about that, because there's a long time where you make nothing.
Right.
Like you pay to do the gigs, you pay to get yourself there. And so finally in 96, my career blows up at the end of 96. And in 97 and 98, I think I headlined 13 out of 24 either main event pay-per-views or semi-main event. Now, I'm not getting paid the whole time. I'm getting paid my guaranteed contract, which is nothing compared to the 7-figure guys. Nothing.
Wow.
So I finally get paid. I make the multi-million-dollar 3-year deal. And that's when they tell me, you blew your back out, you're done. So that was kind of devastating,
Of course. Yeah. And at that point, I mean, I remember those days, and that was like, you're right, like end of 96, like those were a couple of super hot years. I mean, and what was that like? I mean, going from, you knew you had it in you and you fought and persevered, and here it is. Like, how was that to digest and adapt to?
I'd been told by a couple of the veterans early on who saw how hard I worked. They were like, listen, as long as you can stay healthy. Like, I'm the first guy to ice his body in professional wrestling by 5 years. And the only reason guys started then is because they finally brought trainers in, physical therapists in to work with us.
What a concept.
Should have been there. Yeah, right. Should have been there for 20 years already. But everybody looked at me and laughed. They go, what are you icing your knees and your back for? I also was the first to do every week, chiropractic, deep muscle massage therapy. I eventually would get into kinesiology, organic juicing. I was into it in 1995. I started organic juicing because it's all about how you heal your body. Now I'm still partying pretty good back then, but you're setting the yin and the yang for, like, you can punish your body, but you need to nourish your body and heal your body. So I was doing all of that along the way. So when my career finally took off, and it was really crazy the way it happened, and developing that finishing maneuver, the diamond cutter, out of nowhere, made people, like, there's a video on YouTube that's called Diamond Cutters on Everyone. And a guy did it where he just took my diamond cutters, and over years, like probably 2 years, you can see it go from people starting to react a little bit to people jumping out of their seats, throwing up the diamond cutter sign. It was crazy. And if you go back and look who I beat and beat that finishing maneuver, they're enhancement guys. That normally gets like no pop because they get beat up. But I figured, no one ever really saw me being in that top spot except for me. And I was lucky that at one point Dusty Rhodes did, Jake St. Roberts did, Hulk Hogan did, and eventually it would be Randy Savage. When they could see it, they could draw money with you. And the guys who wrote the storylines didn't see it. So I developed enough relationships, which I tell everybody, it's not about who you know. And you know this in the entertainment business. It's so true. It's not about who you know or who knows you. It's about who's willing to say they know you, who's willing to put their ass on the line for you.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, no, I got a comic that fills that spot. No, I've got a musician. You need a bass player? I've got the bass player. Like, don't even look for anyone else. It's like when someone does that for you, and that's what I was building. So when my career blew up, when I dropped the NWO in January 13th. it took so long for that angle to happen because the guys who write the storylines didn't want to see me drop those guys because it put me at a whole different level. And when you do that, they're betting you can draw ratings and stuff. And they didn't think I had it. But when it happened, I exploded. Mm-hmm. And then Randy Savage not only wants to work with me, he wants to put me over. He wants to lift me up. And after that, there was no stopping me. And, it's so funny. And I'm sure as a musician and as a comic, you've had this too. Like you thought you were ready. You were so sure you were ready. But if you really look back in your career, where you really get those spots is where you go, like, if I'd have got it a year earlier, I never would have been as good.
Yeah.
And I was ready, and no one could tell me any different. And I was having so much fun that people could see it,
Yeah.
So that's what made it all worth it.
That feeling translates, man. It's one of the things that I love about wrestling is that the crowd really does decide. Like they can't stop you when it's your time. They just can't stop.
And if it wasn't for this, it never happens. Because when I could go out there, I'd throw in 3 people do it, and then 30, and then 300, then 3,000, then 10,000. You can't, that guy's getting over like crazy. They play my music, and no matter where the camera is, they're doing that, so it was the people, that communication with the people that made it happen. And, when it did, man, it was so fast. I wish I could have had just a camera following so I could go back and look at those moments. But if you see right here in all these pictures that are here, they're all over this room. Yeah. And my life that I experienced, I don't miss it because what I'm doing today is so much bigger than that. But it was just so much fun. Without this foundation of people who really believed in me, DDP Yoga never happens.
It's funny that you say this is so much bigger than that because you're like 3-time heavyweight champion, right? But you feel like this is it. And it's great because you know how many diamond cutters I do every day? Probably at least 10.
Yeah, totally.
First thing every day, I'm like.
I mean, listen, I worked out. I've worked out my whole life. I had a fractured humerus bone. I have plates and screws in my arm, so I can't really do a lot of. I did your workout on the road constantly. It, to me, felt like it fell into that sort of prison cell workout where it's like all you need is the space that you're in. You don't need a ton of, but it changed the idea of dynamic resistance and, changing the way I'll never do a push-up the same. I mean, it's literally changed everything, and it's tensing up, and it's, creating your own. And it kind of, not to sound corny, but it kind of translates to life. You know what I mean? Like you create your own resistance and you create your own, so you can prepare for the recovery and you can prepare for all of that. And it literally, I mean, doing it in hotel room, doing diamond cutters 40 minutes before I'm on stage at, in a hotel room, it came with me and I loved it. And it really, to see the stories and to see the transformation. I was saying to Oteil earlier, talking about getting ready to chat with you, kind of wonder how you feel about it took going through wrestling to get to this moment for you.
Absolutely. First of all, it never happens. One of the things, and if anybody who's listening, it's really the greatest lesson I've ever learned. What looks like could be the worst thing to ever happen to you. And that includes the only thing you can't say that about, it's the worst thing that ever happened to me, turned out to be the best. It's probably death, but after death, divorce, I mean, any other thing that is catastrophic in your life, like when I blow my back out and I get told not by 1, 2, but 3 spine specialists, like top guys, in the country. I went to Houston. I had a guy here in Atlanta. I went to New York. They all said the same thing, like, you're done. To have that emotional gravity, pull myself down and like, why me? I just got here. And then finally, like, I'm really good at like blowing that off and, taking the depression and then getting the hell out of there. If you take every unbelievable person, and when I say that, that could be from Tom Brady to LeBron James to Trump to Obama to Oprah. These are the biggest people in the world. They go down too. The Rock goes down. They don't stay there though. They come right back up again. Okay, how do I fix this? And no one else has to believe you can fix it, just you. And I'm the guy who wouldn't be caught dead doing yoga the first 42 years of my life. So I get that when I talk to somebody, oh, you're doing yoga. No, I don't. And like that, DDPY. I'm good with DDP yoga, but when people call my shit just yoga, I'm like, no.
No
like,
way.
like yoga for people who wouldn't be caught dead doing yoga. And I respect all types of yoga today. I think they're all amazing. I only do mine because that's what works for me. And it's not just stretching, it's stretching, strengthening muscles, ligaments, and tendons. So at any point in time, and I've done, like, you're the fourth podcast I've done today. I could take either one of these feet, take it, pick it up, put it in your face, pull it over my head at 6'4", 224 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal. and 2 months from 66 years young.
Wow.
Awesome.
Amazing. It's so
But you
amazing.
know the difference in your thing, and it's like your superpower, this thing to be able to connect with people. Because watching the stories of people that transformed and feeling it myself when I do the workouts with you in the morning, I told my wife, I was like, it's like having Tony Robbins doing your workout with you, because you inspire people so much, and you help them access their spiritual power, which is the real thing. It's like it's up here and here. Like physically, okay, you can't believe it happened, and someone told you like intellectually it can't happen, but then their spiritual power and their inspiration and that thing, like Relentless, just got me, man. Jeez. That thing got me. I went out and ordered DDP right after that because I was going through the back stuff. So I just want to say thank you and give you credit that it's different. It's not just yoga or even just yoga and isometrics and dynamic resistance and stuff. It's also your superpower to like access that.
Yeah, you're fun to work out with. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're really fun to work out with.
Well, I'm doing it with you, and so many times in yoga classes, people walk around and tell people what to do. Now, those people who can tell you what to do, most of them are super athletes and they're super, super strong, but they walk around and talk. And I do it with you because, it's how I love doing it. And I get my workout done too, and I love doing stuff. Even when people, like, some of my favorite workouts are the chair workouts, where people who don't believe they can really, older people or people who are really beat up, don't believe they can anymore. Like we are starting to shoot a show. Like, I do everything myself. My company, Comeback Studios, did The Resurrection of Jake the Snake, which is one of the greatest comeback documentaries ever on Amazon Prime. You just mentioned Relentless. We originally started making Relentless as just a little mini doc about the company and how it started and where it comes from. And then when we started doing it, the first pass one of my guys did on it, he made it extra long. And he said, D, you might want to really watch this because I think this is something more than just about the company. And then my business partner, Steve, you saw it. He was the greatest storyteller ever. And he was like, dude, we got to we got to put all our focus on this. And it became our next documentary. So both times we had never done any documentaries. We'd never done it before. Steve is a self-taught genius. He's like Yoda of storytelling. And over this last 3 years, probably 5 years, people have been trying to get me to do a reality show with them. And I've never found anybody who could tell me what it was about. And as time went on, reality shows are bullshit. So I want nothing to do with that. we have developed what we're calling a docu-series. And I've seen a couple of them out there, but not like we're doing. We're moving 6 people into my place that I call the Accountability Crib. It's one of my homes that when I was living there with Jake and Scott and Resurrection Jake the Snake. And I'm bringing one of my good buddies in named Josh Nair to like be the guy who's there 24/7 over this 3-month period where we bring 5 individuals into the Accountability Crib. And the name of the show is going to be called Change or Die.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
so many people, and this is for these people, but it's more of an education for the people who are watching the show. And the show will be Biggest Loser, the good parts. I hate Biggest Loser, how they beat up the people and starve the people and had them on pills and whatever the hell they did to try to get them to lose 40 pounds in a week, whatever the deal was there. The good part, the inspirational part, and the part where you can meets The Apprentice in the way that there'll be challenges every week. Like the first challenge, the very first week will be what's your why? Like, why are you here? Why did you want to come here? And then they'll go on for each week will have a different challenge. And for the what's your why, they'll get with our production crew. Each one will have their own editor and filmographer, and they'll come up with a 60 to 90 second what's their why. And the people who are in it, 2 people, some people will know. There's one person from the wrestling world going to be in it, Buff Bagwell. He needs some direction right now, and these people all promised to let me drive.
Nice.
Just let me drive, and maybe I can help you get to a better spot. The other one is Butterbean. And Bean, I was on a show with Rick Bassman, Boss Rutan, on the Baddest Men Alive. What a great guy. Flex Wheeler and Butterbean. And at some point I started talking about this show. And Flex, who I love, he's like, DDP, you should really have Butterbean, in that house with you, because he really needs to, but Bean will tell you, he can't walk 5-10 steps without having to sit down. He's beat up right now, and he's way too heavy. And, he's going to be one of the people. And then we've got 3 other people, and one's a 67-year-old woman. One's about a 29-year-old woman. Both of them are 100 plus pounds overweight. And then there's a kid who's 21. And this was like God's work, how he ended up being a part of this. Someone who's a friend of mine texted me and sent me a picture of him up on TikTok. And this was just my buddy who didn't know this kid from Adam. His brother was moved because the kid was looking for help. And my buddy Jarrett was going to buy DDP Yoga for him, and was going to buy him a year app membership. And he said, would you mind just doing a video for him to help him inspire him that you actually care that he's doing the program? And I text him back, sure, but I might have another idea. And then I talked to him briefly, and then I put him in with my production people, and he's 21, he's 486 pounds, and he's 5'5".
Whoa.
And he was starting to do it on his own. Like, I'm not just going to grab people ever who aren't willing to put the work in, because that's the only way you can get kicked out. And no one really knows, well, how do you get kicked out of the house? Well, you put the work in, you don't. I never liked that part where you're kicking people out. Well, like, if they're not putting the work in, that's different. But if
you're kicking yourself out at that point.
Right.
You're just like,
you can kick yourself out.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Beautiful.
And it seems to me too, something that is very palpable and very evident in most, if not all, of what you do is that vulnerability and surrender and admitting I need help and
Right.
or I'm here to help you is step one in a long step of change. And I wanted to talk with you about that, like how important you think that is, like as a character trait, to be able to be vulnerable and say, like, I need help. I need fixing. I need someone to do it. The Arthur's video, which is such a phenomenal story. You didn't say, I don't think I can help this guy. You go, how can I help this guy? So
Right.
there was never any,
Right.
I don't think I could do this. And it doesn't seem like don't is in your vocabulary. So that vulnerability seems super important.
Yeah. When I see someone who's really putting work in, that's when I like even Jake, when I sent him Arthur's video, this is God, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah, 2012. Yeah, we're coming up on that. Would have been right around now, 10 years ago. And I sent him Arthur's video and he saw it. And I said, dude, I could, send you the program and blah, blah, blah. Cause I give it to all my boys, I just give it to them. And he said he'd do it. And then I called Steve up and told him Jake's going to start the program. And he goes, Jake who? I go, what do you mean Jake who? Jake the Snake.
Jake, yeah.
Yeah. He's like, Jake the Snake? I'm like, yeah, dude. He's like him and Dusty were my two mentors. And I've always wanted to help him for what he did for me. Because I never hit that level without those two guys. Without their friendship and mentoring, never happens. And he's like, well, why don't we get him to move in? And like, you're buying that new house in Atlanta, you're moving back to Atlanta. Why don't we get him to move in? I'm like, whoa. He doesn't have to live with me, because he did that 20 years earlier. And the only reason he left was because my wife at the time, Kimberly, was like, he lost a black cobra, 12-foot black cobra in my house. No bullshit, like real story.
Oh my God.
So he had to go at that point. Yeah.
Did he at least find the cobra?
Yeah, well, no, I found the cobra, and I had to get a snake wrangler. Jake said, "I'll be back. I'll take care of it." Jake came back 3 days later. That was that was back in his Jake crack days. Like Jake was when Jake came into my house, he was addicted to booze, pills, coke, and crack.
Jesus.
Like that's what was But what had happened, I told Jake that I would, if he could lose 20 pounds on his own, he was 307 at the time. So if you can lose 20 pounds on your own, I will fly you up here. I will take care of everything. I'll move you in. I'll take care of your bills. You won't have anything. You won't, and eventually, where Jake was getting booked maybe $500 a night, maybe 750, because he was a risk. He's a gamble. Yeah. You don't know if he's going to show up, and if he does, how bad is he going to be when he gets there?
Right.
So it was a risk. Now Jake's been sober for 8 years. Now Jake makes like $5,000 a night, like guaranteed. He's on AEW. He does the cameos. That cameo thing was huge for all of us who were big stars in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I can't tell you how many cameos I get, on cameo.com where people are getting them for themselves. Like I did 5 of them right before I did this in between the podcast. And I don't do like 1 minute cameos. Mine are 4 minutes to 15 minutes. Wow. Depending on what they did and what they said. And if they do my program, which so many of them do, when you guys go to the app, when you get a chance, the first thing you'll see pop up, it says the list. Yeah. You've seen it every time you go into the app. If you ever go on that list and you see everything, this is why Arthur, Vance Hines, Stacey Morris, Christina Russell, why I have such ridiculous, over-the-top transformations. Because the list starts with what's your why,
Mm.
and it goes into I teach you how to set goals. I educate you on what real food is, not me. Top documentaries. Food Inc. in 2007 won the Oscar. It really put a focus on what's real food and what's shit. And in our country, I'm a huge patriot American, but I'm going to throw a flag where a flag is down. Our food sucks in this country. Heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity. Those numbers are through the roof
Yeah.
in the last 30 years. Go back and watch an Allman Brothers concert in 1979 or 1983 and watch one today. The crowds have gone, with everything else
Yeah.
because they eat shit.
It's not
And
even
what
actual food.
it's not food.
It's
It's
not
not
food.
food. It's in that fast fake food. Like there's three documentaries up there: Food Inc., Genetic Roulette, GMO, OMG. Then there's of course Relentless and Resurrection of Jake the Snake. And there's a lecture I did called Living Life at 90%. And the concept's based on life's 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. Like just like we train our bodies, we can train our brains. And for me, that's the most important organ that we have because that dictates everything. And you literally get to control it if you take control. And that's really when people are really beat up and really hurting, they're really ready to listen. Because when I take gluten and dairy and some people sugar out of their diet, they go from feeling like shit to feeling so much better. Like you can't fake that.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. So when people tell me about, oh, you think GMOs are bad, you're wrong. Oh, I go, talk all you want. I go with results. I go with how do people feel. So on our show, Change Your Diet, I'm going to educate them. They don't have to listen. I don't care. I'm doing it for the people right there. But if you want to listen and you want to literally, the quickest way to really understand food, just eat protein and vegetables, ideally organic, so they're not sprayed all over with pesticides. But just eat protein and vegetables for 3 weeks. Tell me how you feel. You'll feel like you're a completely different person.
Yeah.
So then put other shit back in. And then when you feel like shit, maybe you shouldn't eat that.
Take it.
Or don't complain. Don't complain.
Yeah. When you're
I
dealing
love it,
with
man.
when you're dealing with the folks that are kind of like trying to figure out like, what's your why, I kind of wonder sometimes what the roadblocks are when we know we have to change, right? When we have you said I wouldn't have been caught dead doing yoga. And now look, like it's a whole other that moment when you're like, I would never be caught dead doing that. That moment is something I think that trips us all up quite a bit. Where it goes, I can't do this. I can't stop doing that. Why am I going to make this change? Like it's just that ego or that pride that we kind of struggle with. You see it firsthand get stripped down and changed, right?
Yep. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm sure this isn't the only guy to say it, but he's the guy that made it famous. If you say you can or you say you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
Henry Ford is the guy who said that. But what the hell did he ever do? It's like, think about that. And it wasn't he, and a lot of people think he invented the car. No. More importantly, he invented the assembly line. Like he changed the world. And he was a crazy bastard. Looking back. So he's not like my idol, but that quote is. And some of the things he did, I'll take the best of people who aren't my favorite people when I look at all of their life, but I'll still take, there's certain things that certain people did that you can go, okay, I can learn from that. And for me, learning that flexibility was youth, not just in my body, but in my mind. I had to become flexible to the idea for me to eventually create a DDP yoga.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like without, like I say, it was the worst thing. It was right up there with my divorces as far as felt like the
Yeah.
worst thing ever happened. But even those were the best thing that happened to me. You know, so and I
Yeah.
had great relationships with my ex-wives, you know, and my wife that I'm with today, I mean, I've never been this happy. So there, you know, to me, the worst thing that ever happened to you could always be the best
Yeah.
if you figure out how to make it the best thing. You know,
I just love that you're passing on that belief that you know that Dusty and Jake the Snake, you know, like Randy Savage, these guys helped, you know, because they believed in you. It helped you be like, all right, I could do this. And you're just like multiplying that just so much with what you're doing now. I see why you say it's the biggest thing in your life because that's such a, I just can't even imagine what that feels like. To me, that's even better than playing music, honestly. You
wow,
know,
that's
you're,
good for you. That's super cool. Let me tell you a great story. And these are all reasons why I believe what I believe. So one night I'm talking to Dust, and they had put him out the pasture, WCW, which means they're still paying him because they don't want him to go to WWF with Vince McMahon and come up with some hot idea and spank him. So they're paying him kind of like they'll take a script and they'll buy the script to put it on a shelf
don't use it.
because they have another
Wow.
movie they want to put out.
Man.
So for Dusty, he has all this time. And this is a great picture of me and him 32 years ago.
Wow.
Whoa. Wow.
Look at
In
you,
public,
man.
if you will.
That
In
hair.
public, if you will. Yeah, that hair. Um, but this one night, I'm telling Dusty, because the booking committee doesn't see me being in that spot of a main event performer. So they won't give me the opportunity to prove myself. And at some point, I say to Dusty, I go, you know, Dream, I know I'm never going to be you or Rick or Hulk. I know I'm never going to be the world champion, but these sons, and he went, Dennis, enough. What did you just say? and, and now I feel kind of stupid, you know,
Right.
because what did I just say? I go, okay, Dusty, I know I'm never going to be you. You're like one of the biggest stars ever in this shit. And I said, no, I'm never going to be Rick. He goes, no, D, what did you say after that? I said, well, I'm never going to be the world champion. He said, then what the fuck are you doing it for? Tell it. If you know, as hard as you work, if you don't believe it, D, you need to get the fuck out of our business right now. And he kept talking, and I felt like he just came through and bitch slapped me.
Mm.
And he kept talking. I can't tell you a word he said, but I can tell you exactly what I did. There was a ledger pad right next to my phone. And I pulled it over while he was talking. And I wrote on it, I will be the world champion in 5 years or less.
Wow.
It was 4 years, 4 months, and 14 days. April 11th, 1999, 6 days after my 43rd birthday. The crazy part is I'm in a four-way dance that night with Rick and Hulk and the Stinger, the franchise.
Wow.
I mean, like, what's the odds of that? And I don't even really realize that. I tell that story a lot on Cameo because it helps people understand that sometimes it's where I came up with the original thought of never underestimate the power someone gives you by believing in you.
Yes.
Mm.
And
That's it.
Dusty believed
That's
in me.
it.
especially at that point. And it took a long time before he did as an in-ring performer. But when I told the story one day on Cameo, I thought to myself, oh my God. And I literally, this is all on the Cameo. I just realized something. 4 years, 4 months, and 14 days before this, I told Dusty I wasn't ever going to be him or Rick or Hulk. Yet on this day, I'm stepping in the ring with Rick and Hulk and the franchise, the singer. And Randy Savage is the guest referee. And I walk out the world champion. And that's like our Oscar in our business.
Yeah,
That's why
yeah,
it's
man.
so important, especially your first time. That in the Hall of Fame ring, that's a different level of an Oscar, you know?
But the best part to me is Dusty got you with exactly how you are going to deal with these people on the TV show. It's the why. He's like, why are you here?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, 100%. And
if you ain't here to be world champ, then what are you doing? You know, why?
Right. If you're not here to be the main event, you know, of a, you know, on the card of a bunch of comics or a bunch of bands, why are you here? Are you here just to play? You know, no, I want to be the main event guy. And it enlightened me. Like, it's something I kept that forever. And in one of my moves, I actually lost the original, you know, because things like that were very valuable to me, because that's something in a moment. I kept that for years and years. And then I said, I lost it. But it's still in my mind. I can see it. And it was those moments that make, you know, the story so powerful. And like when I inducted Jake, I knew exactly what I was going to say. When I inducted Jake in the Hall of Fame in the same year, only Jake Roberts could come up with something like this. Jake was in my house. He's down 60 pounds. He's 60 days. No, he was down 30 pounds, 30 or 35 pounds, but he's 60 days sober, which was a really big deal.
Yeah.
And Scott Hall, I got a tweet from X-Pac, Sean Walton, and he said, D, I need your help. Scott's suicidal. He's got a gun. He says he's going to kill himself. Saw what you've done with Jake. Please call him. So I call him, and I tell you, Scott Hall answered the phone of all the time I've ever known him 3 times. And this is one of the times he actually answers the phone. And he's so wasted. And we end up talking, and he heard about Jake and heard about what was happening with Jake. And so he was still semi-coherent. And that was the day that, you know, by the end of the conversation, which was about 20 minutes, we filmed all of it. And much shorter in the documentary, but we filmed it all. And there was some hope at the end of that conversation. And I'd reached over and was grabbing something, and Jake was right next to me. And I looked over him and I went, can you imagine if you and Scott Hall get sober in the same year, in the same house? And Jake, only Jake could say it. He kind of like shook his head. He went, well, I'm going to go get your crown of thorns ready right now. And for it to actually happen, and them both to go in Hall of Fame in the same year. That was like me going in. I went in 3 years later, and those guys both needed to go in before I did. But it was like I was going in anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Man,
they
Jake the Snake story just blew me away. I watched, and I haven't seen the resurrection yet, so I'm really excited for that.
Oh my
But
God.
I
It's
watched
amazing.
just the documentary on him. I guess it was done a long time ago, and I just ended up feeling so much more compassion for him than I thought I would have once you learn about how he grew up and the whole
Right.
backstory. And at the end of that, I think I called you, Mike, or we were
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
right after I'd seen that. I just remembered thinking, oh my God, I hope can fix that relationship with his daughter. It was just so heartbreaking, and it just seemed kind of it seemed pretty hopeless back then. And then
Oh, it's,
I saw some of the interviews with you and him, even though I haven't seen the doc, and I was like, oh my God, Jake is like literally just a different it's a miracle. It's
yeah.
like
I,
raising
I,
somebody from the dead. It's unbelievable.
what's really crazy, and you guys, we all in our business, we all have good friends who are addicts, you know. And what's really amazing when an addict of just booze or pills or coke or crack, but when you have all of that, there's a fog. Like when we go down to film the resurrection the very first day, me and Steve, when we're leaving there, I'm blown away by how beat up he is. Like I would never believe that he would have let himself go that far. And I was kind of in shock because I would do like diamond cutter, hulk it up, tension. Bro, I gotta sit down. I gotta sit down. What do you mean you gotta sit down? You're like, wow. Bar back,
Yeah.
I gotta sit down. Cat, I gotta sit down. Like he sat down in between every move for like 5 minutes. I'm like, oh my God. And then the conversations that we were having, and Steve said to me, how do you think it went? I said, truthfully, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to have a real conversation with my brother ever again. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do it. Now let's fast forward 7 years, which is 3 years ago. Every year, Jay got a little sharper, but 3 years ago, I was like, whoa, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know this guy who's almost as sharp as when he was freaking in his 20s. Like, now, if you hit in the head, we've been hitting the head a bunch of times. So he still has problem with memory sometimes. But overall, I mean, so sharp. Like today, we have our own podcast. It's called DDP Snake Pit. And
Yeah.
every Tuesday, we put it on a different episode. And we talk, I mean, it's not just wrestling. We talk about wrestling, yes. Talk about that show Heels that came out. But when we're talking, everything revolves around like what was the message to that story we just
Yeah.
told you? Like, what did we learn from that? And I'll never forget Steve Yu because he was producing us when we were filming it with Conrad. And after the first 4 shows, he looks at me and he goes, I would never have believed that Jake Roberts could be so inspirational.
Yeah.
Like he's a different guy now. And it's really fascinating. And the fog is cleared. And that's what people have to understand if they're dealing with addiction.
Yeah, and that's Teal like hit me to the term the wounded healer. And that's always something I think about quite a bit because it's like the ones who kind of put themselves through war and lived through it and can come back on the other end and tell the stories and cautionary tales or this is what happened to me and this is how it can happen to you. That's what gives people hope. And that's what gives people. I had a conversation with someone about, therapists and addiction. And they said people who have gone through addiction or who are going through trying to get clean, they want to hear from people who have gone through getting clean. They want to hear from the people who have made the mistakes they made. They want to know that it's okay that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's what's important about stories like Jake. That you make it through the other end, and it's okay, and that's what's inspirational.
Yeah, when you show
Every-
somebody like, look, look at Jake before and after. You could do this. Look at Borman before and after. The cat
Right.
with muscular dystrophy. I was just like, wait, like
Yeah.
man, that documentary, Relentless, is really. So, thank you so much for giving people that message, man. Helping them believe, because that's what you got to do with whether it's addiction, whatever it is. It's so hard to believe you can actually do it. I
Yeah,
thought
man.
that when I was at my bottom, I was like, he can do it, but not me, And it took something, just really.
It goes back to the Roger Bannister story. Roger Bannister was the first guy to break the 4 minute mile. And like they wrote papers, like there was medical papers written how a human being cannot break the 4 minute mile. Their heart will explode. We're talking about back in the 50s, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't believe it because it never been done before.
Right.
And then one guy did it. And then his number one, I can't remember the guy's name, but his number one, competitor, he broke it and beat his record. Then he broke it and beat that record. And then they had and since then, a lot of people have broken the 4 minute mile. It just takes one person doing it to go, well, hell, if he did it.
Right.
And if you can't watch Arthur Borman's video and go, okay, if he did it, look at me, I can walk.
Yeah.
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 I don't have the spikes or the knee braces or the back brace. And,
Yeah.
Well, that's how I felt. I was
Yeah.
like, I didn't break my back or my neck. Like these guys are,
Yeah.
these wrestlers are in really bad shape, And I'm like, well, it just got me up. I was like, let's do this.
I'll be all right. Yeah.
Yeah, for real.
I want to ask you real quick, like you are the guy in a world of the toughest guys in the world that the toughest guys turn to and go, this guy needs help. What's that feel like for you?
I just wish I could help them all. I mean, Eric Bischoff taught me, because even when I was in wrestling, I would do all the charity gigs. I would do all, but it was wearing me out. Like, because if you keep doing and giving, people will keep taking. It's human nature,
Right.
So the hardest thing is saying no. Like as soon as we put up the thing about looking for people for Change or Die, that wasn't supposed to go out at the time because we'd already gotten the people. And it was supposed to go out a week before, but it was on a delay and it went out. And I said, make sure that doesn't go out. And it went out. So everybody knew then. So I got so many calls from so many guys, and not indirectly, it was always someone calling for them.
Yeah.
And when you get the WWE calling you and their program and they're reaching out, and I was like, dude, I would love to do it, but I can't because I'm full, but if someone falls out, yes. And because so many of the guys go through, when you don't have, the sound of the crowd and the smell of the popcorn and you can still do it. And that's it's kind of like being a wrestler who ever had any kind of being over in any way, you could still draw any independent show.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go out where you can make $500 tonight?
Yeah.
$700, $5,000. So it's kind of like being a stripper. When they get there, they can still make that money. They don't want to do it anymore, but I need the money. That's how only way I know. So, guys keep doing it.
Yeah.
And poor Vader, man, Van Vader came to my house for a week with his son Jesse because I knew he'd never do it for himself. So Jesse had to come, and I was like, Leon, I can't help you if you won't stop wrestling, because the doctor told him in 2 years you're going to die of a heart attack. And and he told everybody that too, but he should have listened to the doctor, because he did die of a heart attack in 2 years because he kept working, not every week, but enough.
Right.
And when you get out there, And you guys know when you go to the stage, it's a whole different animal. People who have never been there, they don't know, you know, but it's that, it's just that thing of being in front of people. And when you've been in a spot where they're laughing or they're cheering, man, you can feel like you're unstoppable. I've watched so many guys in the back, and I swore I'd never be this guy because I knew how much damage it would do to me. That is in the back walking around looking like he's 90, and then the music starts, and he said, and before he walks through that curtain looking unstoppable.
Yeah.
And he is until he walks through that curtain. And then,
It
Yeah.
all comes
Man.
back.
Yeah.
I heard
that's
these
I
wrestlers
watched-
talking about wrestling for no crowds through COVID, and they were
Oh.
saying it hurts so much more
mm,
because without the adrenaline of the crowd,
Oh,
every
yeah,
bump
wow.
is just killing you. They're like, but when you got that crowd energy and that adrenaline, you take the bump, and it's like you just don't feel them as much. They said it was brutal without the crowds, man.
Yeah. It's like
And-
doing
and-
Zoom
and-
stand-up shows. It's like, what the hell am I doing?
Right?
I'm sitting
Where's
in my
the
living room.
laughter?
I can't do
Where's the
it.
laughter?
Like unmute. I gotta hear you. You know? Yeah, it's the worst. Really
Yeah, I
is.
just couldn't even imagine that. You know, like I wrestled my last match, and this is crazy. Cody he's the guy who really, Cody Rhodes, you know, I've been mentoring him since he was 12 years old, and he's like my nephew. And when he put this show called All In together, which would become AEW with the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, and then Tony Khan, who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, got involved and created AEW. And now they're on TNT 19 years later. Like I told Cody,
Wow.
I gotta do something. I gotta do one last match just to come back and show what I could do at 2 months from 64 years old.
One last
And-
diamond cutter.
One last comeback.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we do it. And I told him, you know, before the match, we set everything up and the place is hot. The people are going crazy. So now it's set up to be next week. So I said, dude, I ain't been in the ring in friggin' 12 years. I can still go, but I need to walk this dance. I need to walk
Yeah.
this dance. So we got everybody together. Everybody came down. And so Cody gives us the finish. And the finish is going to be I blow the big comeback on everybody. Eventually, Dustin will do his flying roll off the apron. QT will do a flip and land on the guys on the floor. And as they're picking them up, D, you come off the top rope
Oh.
to the
Whoa.
guys on the floor.
Oh,
Oh
dude.
my God.
And I didn't sell it. I didn't go, no way. I just went, wow. I've never done that. And like 20 years later doing it, maybe not the best idea, but because there's so much room, tear your ACL,
Yeah.
break your neck. There's so much room. But again, I took that mindset, like that never got to me because I would never let it come in. It went back. I'm going to blow everyone away. I'm going to nail this. I'm going to pop the crowd. They're going to go crazy. And this is the last move. Ever done.
Oh, there it is. Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Friggin',
Wow. That's
that's
beautiful.
Oh,
the
dude.
last crazy, man. And, you know, that the crowd, when
Oh, man.
this girl named Bunny, she had come up and like she was going to climb the rope, and I just put my hand in her face and I just did that, and she flew across the ring. I didn't know, but that almost got me some real heat because you don't do that, you know. But hey, she was there. So boom, and I look around and that crowd started coming, and when I started climbing, they couldn't believe it. And it was pretty crazy. It was a lot of fun. if you watch that in slow motion, you'll see my head bounce off the cement, not the mat, the cement. And I didn't break myself open and I didn't feel it because of the adrenaline. But if there was no people there,
Oh,
I never would have done it.
Yeah. And you
Never
would
would've
have,
done it.
and if you did, you would have really felt it.
yeah.
Ooh, I might have broke my neck. You know, I might have
God.
broke my neck. Like,
It's magic,
No.
man. It's
Jeez.
great.
Well, I'll tell you, man, it's been an honor chatting with you, and it's and I feel like I've known you because I work out with you. You've been working out with me for the past 8 years, so thank you so
Oh,
much. And
that's amazing.
it's incredible to watch the giving back. Like Oteil said, I couldn't have said it
Yeah.
better. Just watching you take it and give it back to the community and all the people you're motivating and stuff. It's really incredible. Thank you, and take a minute to appreciate it for yourself. You know.
No, I don't take it too seriously. I just sort of have fun with it, and thank God every day. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
go watch
you're
that
not moving
move.
it.
I want to see that last fly off the ropes, and now I'm gonna go get straight on YouTube.
Yeah, it's somewhere on there. I'm sure it might be on. If you look at AEW, it
Oh,
was
fine.
somewhere in January, like January 15th of 2 years ago, and it was a fun moment. And I'm glad I survived and very thankful that nothing happened.
Oh,
Me
man.
too, man. Well, thank you so much for blessing our little podcast, man, with your presence. We really appreciate it.
All right, boys, I appreciate it. Anybody who wants to know more about what I'm doing, go to ddpyoga.com, or like I said, go to Facebook. Just put DDP Yoga together, just like this. Read what people write. It'll blow your mind. Fellas,
I'm
it's been your pleasure.
Yes, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. We'll be doing Diamond Car
Yeah,
tomorrow
'cause
morning. So
See you, boys.
feel the
Bang!
bang. Later, man. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.